The notification arrived on a Tuesday, wedged between a work email about the quarterly review and a reminder to renew my car registration, a group text. My aunt had created a new thread, Parata Family Gathering Coromandel Long Weekend, who's in? I opened it before I'd even finished my morning tea. There was my cousin Wiremu's name, my uncle's, my aunt's 2 daughters, my nan's neighbor, who apparently counted as closer family than I did. 11 names in that thread, and I read each one twice, the way you reread a sentence you don't quite believe. Mine wasn't there. Not a typo, not an oversight, not buried at the bottom, just absent, like I'd never existed at all. I set my phone face down on the kitchen bench and stood there for a long moment, staring at the kettle steam curling toward the ceiling. 26 years old, a full-time job, my own flat in Tauranga, a life I'd built from scratch, and still, somehow, I was the name that didn't make the list. This wasn't the first time. I want to be honest about that, because if I pretend it was, the rest of this story won't make sense. It had been happening for years. Quietly, gradually, the kind of exclusion that's almost polite in how invisible it is. A Christmas lunch I found out about through a photo on Facebook. A birthday dinner for my uncle, where apparently it was just close family. A cousin's engagement party, where my invitation was lost in the post, except nobody else's was. Each time, there was a reason. Each time, I swallowed it. Each time, I told myself that surely people as warm as my family couldn't be doing this on purpose. But there it was again. The Coromandel Long Weekend. The beach house my grandparents had built in the 70s, the one with the wraparound veranda and the Pohutukawa tree at the end of the path. The place where I'd spent every summer until I was about 12, catching kaimoana with my nan and learning to body surf with my cousins. The place that had always felt, to me, like the truest version of what our family could be. And I wasn't invited. I picked my phone back up and read the thread one more time. Wiremu had already replied with 3 wave emojis. My aunt's eldest had asked about bringing her new boyfriend. Someone was organizing a shared grocery list. The whole thing had the easy warmth of people who assume they belong somewhere. I put the phone in my bag and went to work. I didn't cry on the drive in. I didn't text anyone asking why. I didn't compose a careful message, explaining how much it hurt. I had done all of those things before, and every time, the answer had been some version of "we didn't think you'd be able to get time off," or "it's only a small gathering," or, once, memorably, "you always seem like you'd rather be doing your own thing." This time, something felt different. Not in them, in me. Because 3 weeks earlier, on a rainy Thursday afternoon, I had received a phone call from a solicitor in Hamilton. My nan had passed away 8 months before. Quietly, in her sleep, the way she'd always said she hoped to go. The formal reading of her estate had been handled quickly, and we all had assumed that the beach house would pass to my uncle and aunt, who'd been managing it for years. My nan had lived there full-time in her final years, and they had organized the rates, the maintenance, the occasional rental when it sat empty. What none of us knew what my uncle and aunt certainly hadn't expected was the codicil. It had been added to my nan's will 14 months before she died, without telling anyone. The solicitor had needed time to locate me, he said, because my contact details in the original documents were outdated. The codicil was simple, clear, 1 page. If the beach house was ever listed for sale, rented commercially, or if the primary deed holders fell significantly behind on rates or maintenance obligations, any of those conditions ownership was to transfer directly to me. Full title. No conditions attached. My nan had also left a letter, handwritten, in her small, careful script, sealed in a cream envelope with my name on the front. Aroha, she wrote. You are the only one who ever asked me how I was feeling without needing something in return. You drove 4 hours every month to sit with me. You brought the good biscuits and didn't look at your phone. I know what this family has done, and I know you've been too gentle to say so out loud. This is my way of saying it for you. The house belongs to the person who understood what it meant. That's always been you. I had read that letter sitting in my car outside the solicitor's office, rain tapping against the windscreen, unable to move for a very long time. And now, 3 weeks later, I was reading a group text I hadn't been added to. The house, as it turned out, was already mine. My uncle and aunt had fallen 11 months behind on the rates. There had also been an unpaid maintenance account. The old deck had needed restumping. The work had been done. The invoice had not been paid. Both conditions, as described in the codicil, had been met. The solicitor had filed the transfer paperwork. It had been finalized 5 days before that group text appeared on my phone. I had said nothing. I was still deciding what to do with it, if I'm honest. The knowledge sat in my chest like a stone I didn't quite know how to carry. But when I saw that thread 11 names, none of them mine, something settled in me. Not anger exactly. Something quieter than that. A kind of clarity. I took 4 days of annual leave and booked myself into the beach house under my own name. I drove down on the Thursday evening, windows down, radio loud, the Coromandel Peninsula opening up around me in the golden late summer light. The house sat at the end of a gravel road, just as I remembered it, the Pohutukawa tree, enormous now, its roots lifting the garden path in slow, patient arcs. The veranda wrapped around the front and one side, looking out over a stretch of grass that ended at the coastal track. I let myself in with the key the solicitor had provided. Inside, everything smelled the way I remembered. Salt and old timber, and something faintly like the cedar chest my Nan used to keep her good tablecloths in. The furniture had been rearranged, the walls repainted in a shade of gray-white I didn't recognize, but the bones of the place were exactly the same. The window in the kitchen that you had to lift and jiggle before it would latch. The step in the hallway that had always creaked. The view from the back bedroom, straight out over the water to a string of distant islands. I stood in that back bedroom for a long time. I hadn't planned to be there when they arrived. I want to be clear about that. My original thought had been simply to be there, to be present in a space that was now legally mine, to spend the weekend quietly, and then decide how to move forward. But I woke on Saturday morning to the sound of tires on gravel, and by the time I'd made my tea, 3 cars had pulled up outside. I recognized my uncle's ute immediately, my aunt's station wagon behind it, packed so full of bags and boogie boards and boxes of groceries that the boot was barely shut, Wiremoo's car behind that. I watched from the kitchen window as they piled out, stretching, laughing, already at ease. My aunt was already reading out a list of things she'd brought. My uncle was shading his eyes and looking up at the roof. Wiremoo was lugging a chili bin toward the front door. They hadn't seen me. I set my mug down and went to open the door. The look on my aunt's face when she saw me standing in the doorway is something I have thought about many times since. It moved through several expressions in very quick succession, surprise, confusion, a flicker of something that might have been guilt, and then a kind of careful composure that I recognized as the face she put on when she was about to manage a situation. "Aroha," she said. "What are you doing here?" "I'm staying here," I said. "I've been here since Thursday." "We've got the house booked for the whole weekend," my uncle said, coming up behind her. "You can't be. Did someone give you a key?" "The solicitor did," I said. When the title transferred, there was a pause. "What do you mean, the title transferred?" my aunt said. "Nan left me the house," I said. "There was a codicil in her will. I found out about it a few weeks ago. The transfer went through at the start of this month." The silence that followed was not the comfortable kind. My uncle's expression had gone very still. My aunt looked at him, then back at me. Wiremoo, who had stopped halfway up the path with the chili bin, was watching all of us. "That's not possible," my uncle said. His voice was measured, but there was something underneath it. "We've been managing this property for years. We're the deed holders." "You were," I said gently. The codicil had conditions. The rates were 11 months in arrears. The deck restumping invoice was unpaid. Both conditions triggered the transfer clause. I paused. "I'm not trying to ambush you. I've been trying to work out how to have this conversation, but you sent a group text to everyone except me, so I suppose we're having it now." My aunt's voice went up half a pitch. "Aroha, that's not fair." "Which part?" I asked. "The house? Or the group text?" No one answered that. What happened next was not a screaming match. I want to be honest about that too, because I think people expect these moments to be louder than they are. My aunt said they needed to call their solicitor. My uncle said there must have been a misunderstanding. Wiremoo put the chili bin down and went and sat on the bonnet of his car, and looked at the sea. I went back inside and made a second cup of tea. By that afternoon, the calls had started. My aunt had rung what felt like every person in the extended family. Her version of events, from what I pieced together later, was that I had gone behind everyone's backs to manipulate the will, that I had taken advantage of an elderly woman, that this was not what Nan would have wanted. My phone filled up with messages. Some were questions. Some were accusations dressed up as questions. One from a cousin I hadn't spoken to in 2 years said simply, "Is this true? Did you do something with Nan's will?" I didn't reply to most of them. I sat on the veranda in the late afternoon light and listened to the sea and thought about what my Nan had written. The house belongs to the person who understood what it meant. My older sister, Hinarangi, was the only one who rang to listen rather than to accuse. "Tell me what actually happened," she said. So I did. Start to finish. The solicitor's phone call, the codicil, the letter, the rates arrears, the timeline. Hinarangi listened without interrupting, which is one of the things I have always loved about her. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. "I need to tell you something," she said. "I wasn't going to, because I didn't want to make things worse between you and them. But you should know," she took a breath. "Last Christmas, when you weren't there, I overheard Auntie talking to Mum. She said it was easier without you there, that you made people uncomfortable because you were she said, too serious, that you didn't fit the vibe they wanted." I was quiet for a long time. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner," Hinarangi said. "Don't be," I said. "I think I already knew." The next morning, there was a car in the driveway that I didn't recognize. A man got out, younger than I expected, carrying a folder. He knocked on the door and introduced himself as being from a local legal firm, acting on behalf of my aunt and uncle. He said they were contesting the will codicil on the grounds that my Nan had not been of sound mind when she added it, and that they were applying for a temporary injunction to prevent me from occupying the property until the matter was heard. I thanked him for letting me know. I closed the door. I stood in the hallway for a moment, with my back against the timber, and felt the whole weight of it settle on me. Then I rang the solicitor who had handled my Nan's estate. Her name was Margaret, and she was magnificently unruffled. She had, she told me, anticipated something like this. She had, consequently, been thorough. My Nan had undergone a formal capacity assessment before adding the codicil standard practice for a solicitor who knew their job. There was documentation. There was also, she told me, video. "Video?" I said. "Your Nan asked us to record the signing," Margaret said. She said, and I'm quoting her notes here, that she wanted there to be no room for anyone to claim she didn't know her own mind. She was quite clear about who she was protecting and why. I sat down on the kitchen floor. "She knew they'd contest it," I said. "She did," Margaret said. "She'd thought about it carefully. That's rather the point." The matter went to a hearing 3 weeks later. I drove to Hamilton alone. I wore a dark green dress that had been my Nan's. She'd given it to me herself 2 years before she died, said it had always looked better on me anyway. My aunt and uncle arrived with their solicitor and 2 of their daughters. My aunt didn't look at me when I sat down. My uncle stared at a point somewhere above my head. Their solicitor was polished and well-prepared. She argued that my Nan had been vulnerable in her final years, that I had visited frequently in ways that created undue influence, that the codicil was inconsistent with my Nan's stated wishes in other conversations. Then Margaret submitted the capacity assessment, the signed codicil, and the video. The hearing room was very quiet as the recording played. My Nan, seated upright in her good chair in the front room of the beach house, turning to face the camera with the particular expression she'd had when she wanted to make sure she was being understood. "I am adding this codicil because I know my own family," she said. "I know what they do and what they don't do. Aroha has been here. The others have not. I am not confused. I am not being pressured. I am correcting something that should have been corrected a long time ago. I want that on the record." The adjudicator looked at the documentation for a long time after the video ended. When she spoke, she said that there was no basis for the injunction, that the evidence of capacity was thorough and clearly documented, that the conditions triggering the title transfer were matters of factual record, the rates arrears, the unpaid invoice, and that the codicil had been executed lawfully, The application was dismissed. She paused before she moved on to the next matter and said, not quite looking at anyone, "A person's right to determine the future of their own property is not diminished by the disappointment of those who expected to inherit it." I walked out into the Hamilton afternoon and stood on the footpath for a moment, breathing the ordinary air of an ordinary street, feeling something loosen in my chest that had been tightened for a very long time. I didn't speak to my aunt or uncle before I left. I drove back to the Coromandel. The beach house in the late afternoon was soft with golden light, the kind that makes everything look like it's been handled gently. I had brought groceries. I had brought, also, a box I hadn't opened found in the back of the cedar chest in the second bedroom, where my Nan had kept things she wasn't ready to deal with. I opened it at the kitchen table. Inside were photographs, most of them older than me. My Nan as a young woman, laughing, standing on the same veranda in a different era. My grandfather in his fishing gear. Family Christmases from the 70s and 80s, the faces young and unself-conscious. And underneath the photographs, small and wrapped in tissue paper, a greenstone pendant I had not seen since I was a child. My Nan had worn it every day until her hands became too unsteady to manage the clasp. I sat at that table for a long time. I didn't put the pendant on that night. I just set it on the kitchen windowsill where the last of the light caught it, and I made dinner and ate it on the veranda with the sound of the sea for company. Hinarangi arrived the next morning, unannounced, with her partner and a supermarket bag full of fresh bread and good coffee. "I'm not here to take sides," she said, coming through the gate. "I'm here because I want to see you in a house that finally makes sense." We spent the morning doing small things. She wiped down the shelves in the second bedroom while I sorted through the linen cupboard. Her partner fixed the latch on the kitchen window that had never worked properly. Nobody talked about the hearing. In the afternoon, we sat on the veranda, and Hinarangi reached over and squeezed my hand. She knew exactly what she was doing, Hinarangi said. Nan always did. "I know," I said. "Are you going to keep it? Live here?" I looked out at the Pohutakawa tree, at the way its roots had lifted the garden path in their quiet, patient way, refusing to be redirected. "I don't know yet," I said. "I might rent it out. Or I might come on weekends. Or I might move down here eventually." I paused. "But I'm not going to let anyone else decide that for me." That evening, after Hinarangi and her partner had gone, I walked the coastal track that ran behind the property. It was the same track I'd walked with my Nan 100 times, collecting shells, identifying plants, watching the light change on the water. She had known every bend of it. She had known the name of every bird we'd seen from it. I walked it in the early dark until the stars came out. When I got back to the house, I found a card in the letterbox. No envelope, just a folded piece of paper. Mrs. Parada from down the road, the one who had lived 3 houses over for 30 years, had written in wobbly but deliberate handwriting, "Welcome back, love. Your Nan always said you'd find your way home." She was right. I carried that card inside and put it on the windowsill next to the greenstone pendant. There was no dramatic reconciliation with my aunt and uncle. I won't pretend there was, because I think we are so often handed stories where every broken thing gets mended, where the family gathers and someone says sorry, and the light changes, and everyone goes home softer. Sometimes that doesn't happen. Sometimes you simply stop waiting for it. My aunt sent me a text 2 weeks after the hearing. It said, "I hope you're happy now." I read it. I thought about it. I didn't reply. Not out of cruelty, not out of the desire to wound, but because I had spent so many years composing careful replies to messages that had never once been sent carefully, and I was finished with that particular exhaustion. There are things I have learned from all of this that I want to share, not because I think I have it all worked out, but because I stood in a lot of the same confusion that maybe some of you are standing in right now. The first is that exclusion is rarely accidental when it happens more than once. We are very good at making excuses for the people we love, at offering them the benefit of the doubt over and over again, until we've given away the whole benefit and still have nothing to show for it. 1 missed invitation is an oversight. 5 missed invitations across as many years is a pattern. It is okay to name the pattern, even when the people creating it are family. The second is that the people who love you don't make you feel like a guest in spaces where you belong. This sounds simple. It is perhaps the hardest thing I have ever had to actually accept. Because we learn, very early, that family is loyalty. And loyalty means staying. And staying means not requiring too much. And not requiring too much means making yourself smaller and smaller until you wonder where you went. You are allowed to take up space. You are allowed to ask for the thing you need. And you are allowed to stop asking when asking never leads anywhere. The third is that grief and anger can exist together without one canceling the other. I grieved the family I had wanted. The one in the photos on my nan's kitchen wall, where everyone is laughing and nobody is keeping score. I was also angry. Both things were true, and I did not have to choose between them. The fourth is that not every bridge deserves to be maintained. There is wisdom in forgiveness, but forgiveness is not the same as pretending nothing happened, and it is not the same as returning to a situation that diminished you. You can forgive someone completely and still understand that the relationship, as it was not one you need to re-enter. Letting something end is not failure. Sometimes it is the most honest thing you can do. And the last thing, the one my nan knew, the one she put into a codicil and recorded on video and wrapped in a cream envelope, is that being overlooked does not make you invisible. It only means the wrong people were doing the looking. The pohutukawa outside the beach house is blooming this month. Deep red flowers, the kind that look almost unreal against the blue of the water. I have been coming down on weekends, sometimes with Hinarangi, sometimes alone, learning the place in a different way than I did as a child. Less as a guest, more as someone who belongs here. I hung the greenstone pendant in the window of the back bedroom, where it catches the morning light. Some mornings, I sit on the veranda with my tea and listen to the sea, and I think about my nan sitting in this same spot. I think about what it takes to know your own mind well enough to protect someone else with it, even when you're running out of time. She didn't leave me the house to punish anyone. I believe that completely. She left it to me because she understood that belonging needs to be real, or it is nothing at all. She was giving me something she hadn't been able to give me while she was alive. Not a property, not a title on a document, but the undeniable proof that someone had seen me clearly, and had said so, and had made it last. I didn't burn anything down. I didn't chase anyone out. I just came home. And for the first time in a very long time, I knew exactly where that was. If you've ever sat outside a circle you should have been included in at a table, in a group chat, in a family story about itself, I want you to know that your absence from their list is not a verdict on your worth. They get to decide who they invite. They do not get to decide who you are. You don't have to earn your place in this world by making yourself easier for people who never intended to make room for you anyway. Know your own value, even when it isn't reflected back to you. Document what matters. Keep the letters, and stay close to the people who remember your name without having to be reminded.